Welcome to today's episode of Tax Mchuzi. My name is Anand Priska and I'll be your moderator for today's session. In studio today, we are joined by tax expert Tony Kalunji. Tony, I know you've been on the show for a couple of times, but please allow me to request that you reintroduce yourself and you share your opening remarks.
Thank you, Priska. My name is Tony Kalunji. I work as an officer in the Legal Services and Border Affairs Department of URA. Currently, I'm happy to be here. I'm going to be talking about installment payments, how we can understand them, what to do when you're applying for them, and the benefits. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Tony. So like Tony said, today's topic is understanding installment payments. So as URA, we know that there is times that your business will experience some cash flow issues, and because of that, we came up with an initiative called installment payments. It allows you to pay like chivanjampola in bits. You don't have to pay in bulk. So Tony, we're going to start off by, would you please define for the taxpayer what installment payments is?
Thank you, Priska. Now, installment payments is when a taxpayer requests to pay taxes within an extension of time, ordinarily that beyond that which is supposed to have paid them, and in more than one instance. So we know the due date for payment of taxes is ordinarily that due date when you file the return, or when the tax becomes due, or when it becomes uncontested. So you may realize you can't pay it there and then, and you don't dispute the tax. So what you do, you request to pay it beyond that time, and not in once, but you request for installments within which to make the payments. So that is the installment payment plan.
Okay, so who can apply and who can benefit from this initiative?
Thank you for that. Now, it's not limited. There is no limit on either a large or a small taxpayer. Every taxpayer can apply. However, the catch is that you must have a liability that is not contested.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you have a liability and you believe it is supposed to be paid, then you qualify to apply. But if you have no tax due to pay, then you can't apply. If you're still disputing the tax to pay, then there is no need for you to apply.
Okay. So for how long will this, when I have to pay in installments, how long is that installment period?
The law does not limit on the period of installment, but practically there are periods and levels of approval. For instance, if you want your installments to be made in 4 months, 4 installments, or 6 or 12, then it requires a higher level of approval. Because if you want 12 months and more, you need approval of the Commissioner General. If it comes to 6, you get that of a commissioner. If it comes to 4, then an assistant commissioner. Then if it is less, you can get approvals.
Okay. So, Tony, if I'm a taxpayer and I walk into your area and I'm saying, I cannot pay everything in bulk, please, break it down for me. What is the procedure? Like, just break it down from the beginning
to the end.
Step by step.
Thank you. Now, the procedure, the application, it has to be in writing.
Okay.
But URA made the process easy. So you don't just walk in oral and request. You go to the URA web portal.
So I don't just send an email?
No. There is a web portal. You go, it's the URA homepage, www.ura.go.ug. Then when you go there, you go down to forms, download forms. Now when you go to download forms, there will be downloading forms that are manual and online, but focus on manual forms.
Okay.
Now when you click on manual forms, you will see a form that has application for payment of taxes in installments. You click on the form, you download the form, you fill it in. It is easy. You fill it in with all the particulars. After you fill it in, you submit it at any URA station that is near you. When you submit it there, they will get the form and then they upload it internally in URA. So depending on how you have applied for it, it will be allocated to someone to perform that task. Now when they perform that task, they will then normally at the end of the day invite you to see the manager debt collection URA. Now when you go to the manager debt collection, because it's an agreement, then you'll be able to sign, they will draft for you a memorandum of understanding with the particulars of installments, the taxes you've requested for, securities. For instance, the requirements for individuals would be, we simply require you to give us post-dated checks, because for every installment you will undertake to pay, a check will be signed that is post-dated for that installment. That will just cash it. Then we'll require your identifications, but if you're an individual, national ID or passport, but national ID preferably. Then for an individual, we'll require someone to guarantee that you will pay. So even the guarantor will have also their identifications plus photograph. Then with the MOU, if I told you to sign it, you have to pay stamp duty for it. You pay the stamp duty of 45,000. And then after that, depending on the circumstances, you can be required to submit additional security. Then we will have tax heads like customs, whereby you will be required to leave your passport, a copy. Then for non-companies, the requirements generally will be the same, just that instead of a guarantor, you will get a witness.
Just to hit pause. You said sometimes the security that's needed, sometimes.
Yes.
So beside, beyond the passport, what else would you, in a typical situation, would they request for?
An example would be land title, certificates of title, cars, security, depending on the circumstances, is availed.
Okay, so how about for the non-individual?
Now for the non-individuals, the requirements generally are the same, but for companies and maybe partnerships would
There's a slight difference.
So for companies, instead of having someone to guarantee, you can have someone to witness the process. Then of course, the way companies execute these MOUs, they normally sign with a director signs, and then you'll have what we call a company seal or stamp affixed on the MOU. And then basically the documents are gone through and signed properly. And then the installment payment is approved. It is signed by the respective authorities. You take a copy, and then also retain a copy.
So how long does this process normally take, going through the requirements and everything?
It depends on the circumstances, but it's possible to get it, if at all, because now if you submit the form late, but let's say someone is diligent, I believe even within 5 days they should be able to get one.
Wow. That's
very even efficient. If the circumstances are there, it could happen that you get your installment approved in less.
Okay, that's very efficient. So that's companies. How about partnerships?
Partnerships, the same. The difference would be, whereas a company would submit particulars of the directors and the secretary, which is the Form 20, or formally the Form 7, a partnership will submit a partnership deed. Yes, to show its particulars of who the partners are.
Okay, so you mentioned that after someone fills out, writes to URA, they can walk to any station and they will have this process worked out. But then in the event that I stay in, let's say, Boise, but my business is in Ginger. Well, the stations, like my business is somewhere else, but Boise is the closer place for me to go. It's okay? It doesn't matter?
Yes.
It doesn't matter?
Okay. It's okay.
I just needed clarity on
it's
that.
Okay.
Thank you for that. So what happens what are some of the penalties if that may come up if a client does not comply to the processes you've described?
Now, ordinarily, I wouldn't call it a penalty per se, but what happens if you default on any one installment? Then the tax that you have not yet cleared, the outstanding tax, becomes payable immediately. Let's assume you have 4 installments. You pay the first one, then the balance, of course, reduces. Now, when you default on the second one, the total of the unpaid becomes payable immediately, and URA has the right to come and enforce. Now we have a lot of enforcement measures that we can use. We can seize, we can attach assets, we can stop you from leaving the country, we can come and onto your business, we can issue agents notices to people who have your money and they pay. So if you default, everything becomes payable immediately.
Okay, so you talked about an agency notice.
Yes,
So
yes.
if I have defaulted, you will not even like ask me for permission to like, it immediately, like enforcement just takes over. There's
It
no-
takes over because we even sign a memorandum of understanding,
from
and
the
normally
get-go.
those terms are explained to
Very
you.
clear.
What will happen if you don't pay? And normally you sign and you accept. Yeah.
Okay, yes. So that's fair enough. Okay, dear viewers, if you have any questions on understanding installment payments, Tony is here. Please send in those questions and we shall respond to them in a Q&A session that will come in a little later. Okay. Tony, I'm going to get back to you. So how different is this installment option from the installment payment of provisional tax?
Okay, thank you for that. Because now under the income tax regime, taxpayers are supposed to file what we call provisional returns.
Yes.
For the companies, they file, they are supposed to file, but when it comes to payment of those provisionals, they are allowed to pay the provisional tax there in installments. So it's the same word of installments. So for a
Okay.
company, you pay it twice. You pay the installments in the provisional returns twice a year. Then for individuals, it's per quarter.
Okay.
Now the difference, now that installment under the provisional tax regime is different from this payment of taxes and installments that we are talking about.
Okay.
But ideally, the main difference is under the provisional, that tax that you're paying in installments is not a final tax.
Oh, okay.
Because you at the end of the year, when you're filing your final return and you're making your final payment, it's possible that you can end up adding up, or you can end up being in a credit position, because it's not a final tax.
It's not a final
But for this tax, for the installment payment plan,
It's a final
it is for tax that is final,
Final.
that you're not even contesting, that you agree you're supposed to pay. Yeah, so that is one of the major differences. But still, also, this provisional, the installment payment plan under the provisional tax is limited to income tax.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because provisional returns or provisional filing is only limited to income tax. But now when you look at this plan that we are talking about, and actually when you download the form of application of payment of taxes and installments, first of all, it has income tax. You can pay income tax in installments.
But it also has the other taxes.
There is excise duty, value added tax, and we will have gaming, pooling and betting. We have also actually have customs taxes. So this one is broader.
Oh,
The other one
apply
is
for
limited.
presumptive?
Presumptive. I believe you can make your application.
Okay.
And they look
at it.
Withholding pay. So this one is limited in that scope. And then of course the penalties differ. Because now if you fail to make an installment under the income tax provisional installment regime,
Yes.
you will have to pay, first of all, there's an express penalty.
Oh, okay.
But here, on the other hand, I wouldn't call it a penalty if you fail to honor your MOU. There we just come and enforce everything. But we don't penalize you per se by giving you an additional. We just collect the interest that continues. Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm getting from the difference between provisional installment payment of provisional tax and just this installment payments, it's sort of like installment payments is like when you go to buy something but you can't really afford it, so you suggest, let me pay in bits because I don't have cash immediately. So it's the same concept.
True. Well put.
Okay, so do this when you pay in installments, do you attract a specific interest? Yeah.
Thank you for that. Now, also that one is an important question, because ordinarily some people say that when you go to pay for taxes in installment and you sign an MOU, you pay extra interest. But to put the picture properly, you realize there is no special interest. What happens is like this. When you request to pay taxes in installments and you say you want to pay, let's say, in 4 installments, and you'll pay, for instance, in 4 months. What the system does, it calculates interest. Remember, if you don't pay taxes on a particular day, interest keeps on accumulating.
Yes.
So the system gets the interest that you would have paid on the 4th month when you're finishing, and then it spreads it out.
Okay.
So there is no special interest, just that when you're given an installment plan, and let's say you want to pay 10 million in installments, it's possible that you can be given a payment plan that has more than 10 million. But the reason is it has taken into account the interest you would have paid, because every month or every time that goes by without you paying taxes, interest keeps on accumulating. So the system totals everything and computes, and it says, okay, you want to pay 10 million within 4 months. Had you paid the 10 million at the end of the 4th month, then the interest would have been this.
Okay.
And the catch is this: if you want, if for instance you enter into an MOU to pay taxes and installments, and you, as soon as you've signed it, you get the money, the entire money.
The whole bulk.
Yeah, you can pay, and then the interest stops being
like
calculated.
Okay.
So there is no special interest, just that the interest that you ought to have paid is also taken into account when you're signing the MOU.
Okay. So by and large, it's still more recommended for you to pay on time.
True.
Okay, so you mentioned when someone wants to get into the installment plan, there's an MOU that is signed.
Yes.
So the taxpayer, am I the one who suggests what plan can work for me, or you are as like, no, let's give you the lineup of how you should pay, or it's a conversation?
Yeah, I think more of the 3, but the initial right is given to the taxpayer to suggest.
Okay.
The form is indicative. You suggest the installments you want and for which particular tax. Now, when you go to have a discussion with our manager, debt collection, or the debt collection unit in legal, you can request. That's when they will put you to, they will request for something. They will say, oh, you want to pay $1 billion in maybe 12 months. Can you give us security in form of a land title, a bank guarantee, and so on? Then when you realize you don't have the requirements, they can tell you, oh, how about we put these installments here? So that one is possible. But the first right is you request.
Okay.
You request, and if you fulfill the requirements, they give you. They give you. But then even if you don't fulfill, we request, we can engage you to see that you take home what you can afford.
Okay. And then, so is there a limit to how many times I can come and ask for an installment plan?
Well, the law is quiet. It does not put a limit on how many installments, but it's also discretionary on your end. We can assess you, and it will be for your own good, for instance, to pay the tax. But there is no limit. That's a general answer. But we can look into it, because if at all, for instance, if you've been compliant with every MOU and paying in installments, we should really give you more installments. But if you've defaulted on several and you have still others and you have no security, then we can look into that. But there is no limit.
Okay. I have to say this is a very good initiative, especially coming through this hard economic times we're going through, post-COVID and then the Ukrainian war. So it comes in handy. So taxpayers, if you feel you do not have the cash in bulk to make these your tax payments, please visit any of the URS stations and write to us, and we shall be willing to pay in installments. Just make sure you communicate, you keep the relationship between you and URA. And you can always, if you have more questions on installment payments, you can always reach out to the contact center. They work 24/7, and and they have toll-free lines, so you can always reach out. We are always looking forward to helping you and meeting your tax obligations as easy as can be. So Tony, at this point, there's a question coming in. So Anonymous is saying, I am a taxpayer. I was requested to file a return by December, which I did and paid by 11th January 2023. Is that a provisional or final return? Besides, if it is final, why could URA not wait for me to file and pay around June 2023? I'm doing this because I don't want any issues with the taxman. Did it come out clearly, or I read it again?
Yeah, I think I've understood it. I don't know whether they are individual or they are company, but if they are individual and you are requested to file a return by December,
yes, December
and they
31st.
filed by December 31st, and they paid.
They paid late.
They paid late.
11th.
That
11th January.
Yes. Well, that is most likely to have been a provisional.
Okay.
Provisional return. Now, the due date for payment of taxes is on the date when you file the return.
Okay.
So you ought to have filed and paid by 31st.
By
but
31st.
Thank God you also paid by 11.
Yes, so that there's not like
Yeah, so
interest
that does not. Of course, the idea of you paying beyond that time could have implications, but you can engage at least URA if you have any query, and they can advise you.
So they can visit the nearest URA station,
Yes,
and then
yes.
just have like a longer chat about.
And then the other question of, since it was a provision and not a final return, why couldn't URA wait for them to file it till June? Now URA operates under the law, unfortunately, and we can do so much to help you, but we are constrained by the law that mandates the taxpayer to file provisional returns for income tax purposes. Now the law is there and you're supposed to comply with the law.
Yes.
It's not about you are waiting, because if at all we wait, would not be fulfilling
the mandate.
returns. And then, but the benefit is that it also takes away the burden of you waiting to file the final return. Yeah, the provisional ones help you.
Okay.
There could be a great benefit if at all you end up filing a return and you're in a credit position. Yeah, or if you have to only maintain that same thing or even top up
a bit. So what if they didn't specify, but what if they're not a non-individual? Because is it the same?
Yeah, it's
advice?
the same.
Okay.
The idea is that the non-individual has to file twice. The companies have to, but then the individuals every quarter, four times. Yeah.
Okay, I believe we have answered Anonymous, and with that, Tony, thank you for being an amazing resource. I believe our taxpayers have gotten the gist of what installment payments is and how to go about this. So Tony, just share with the people your parting shots and we'll wind up.
Thank you to everyone who has tuned in. Now we understand payment of taxes can happen when you're willing to pay, but you're constrained. Now the tax laws put in place measures that can assist you or can lift off that weight. And one of them is the extension of time within which to pay the taxes and the installment payment program. So if you feel like you have taxes to pay and you don't have the entire money, there is nothing wrong with you requesting to pay the money and you pay it in installment. It saves you the pressure. Because and the benefit is that if you have, even if you have tax due and you have an installment payment plan, and you're honoring that plan, URA will not come and agency you. There are those enforcement measures that are extreme. But if you sit back and you don't enter into an installment payment plan, you may not, for instance, get a tax clearance certificate. You may not get an exemption. You may not get a breathing space if URA comes to enforce taxes from people who have your money through agents' notices. So it is a sane way of conducting business, and it keeps you planned and focused. So the avenue is there. If you have a lot of tax, just go to the URA portal, download the form of application of payment tax and installments, fill it in, submit to any URA office. Even if you're driving and you're going to just submit, they will assist you, and then they will get back to you, where you will sign an MOU, and you will live happily thereafter.
Thank you, Tony. That has been very, very exhaustive, and I believe we have taken, we've understood what installment payment is all about. At taxpayers, thank you for being an amazing audience. Thank you for always tuning into Tax Mchuzi every Thursday, and we look forward to having you next week. And we call upon you to 15th is around the corner, so please make those tax payments, file those returns, and keep the relationship going with URA. We'll see you next Thursday, same time, same place. Thank you, and bye.